So, if you watched one of my previous videos, you would know that I'm far from being a fan of Illumination. For the most part, the studio plays it safe when it comes to making their movies. As a result, most of their content is consistently meh, and Despicable Me 4 is the latest and most obvious example of everything I don't like about the franchise and the studio. But soon after posting that video, some people came out to defend the movie and the studio in general, saying how they enjoyed the film a lot. And a few of them even went to say they enjoyed it more than Inside Out 2. Now, putting my doubt on that comment aside, I acknowledge that it's not wrong to like the movie. Again, enjoy whatever you like. The reason why I am so hard on this franchise and Illumination broadly is because they have made some great movies in the past. And by far, their best movies, in my opinion, are, surprisingly, the first two Despicable Me movies. What makes this surprising is that the Despicable Me movies are not actually that different from each other on the surface. All four movies feature the same cast of characters with the same great voice actors. All of them feature rather good soundtracks. All four movies generally use the same types of humor, at least on paper. The animation, unlike with the other elements of these movies, actually improved as the franchise progressed. But despite staying consistent, if not improving in most of these areas, there is one thing Despicable Me 4 got wrong that earlier Despicable Me films got right. What is that one thing, you may ask? It was the writing. Yeah, the writing of Despicable Me 4 was just bad compared to most movies in general. Now, most would say Despicable Me and most Illumination films never really had excellent writing, and they would be right. When you compare Illumination to Pixar or to the latest films of DreamWorks and Sony Animation, obviously their films fall flat. But the thing with Illumination is they don't need to have writing so great that it would bring you to tears. It just had to be good enough to where it allows its strengths like the comedy and voice acting actually shine through for people like me to appreciate. To see what I mean, let's look at how the plot of these movies go. In the first movie, Gru starts out as a villain who is, well, despicable towards the people around him. However, when another villain, Vector, sabotages his evil plan to steal the moon, he adopts three girls, Margot, Edith, and Agnes, as part of his plan to put his heist back on track. With a fair amount of scenes filled with tomfoolery, which kinda makes this plot seem more endearing, it eventually worked, but his time with the girls caused him to actually care about them, and that makes him vulnerable to blackmail from the antagonist. All of this resulted into a climax where Gru and his minions rescue the girls, and this scene was quite a roller coaster of emotions. Once the conflict has been resolved, Vector is then stranded on the moon, and Gru is now a changed man, going from evil villain to loving father of three girls who also grew to love him. Then there's the second movie. This one starts off from the status quo set up at the first movie, where Gru continues to care for his girls, but then comes Lucy Wilde, an agent from the AVL, and she recruits Gru to help out the agency, although against his will in a way, and find the villain they are looking for. Now, unlike with the first film, the second movie did have multiple subplots that diverged from the main plot. While the main plot revolves around Gru trying to catch the main antagonist of the film, El Macho, the subplots focused on the other characters, like how the minions keep disappearing, the girls, specifically Agnes, seek to have a mother in their life. This in turn connects to Gru's story to eventually liking Lucy, and likewise for vice versa. All this culminates into the big climax where Gru has to battle El Macho to save all of the minions, which were all mutated by him, and save Lucy especially, who by this point also loves Gru. Once the conflict is resolved, Gru and Lucy become a couple and eventually get married. The movie ends with Gru, Lucy, and the girls finally becoming a family together. So with these two movies, while their stories are rather simple, they flow well with a variety of scenes that included comedic moments, sure, but also had some emotional moments too. Now compare these plots to Despicable Me 4 and by extension the third movie while we're at it. Trying to summarize these movies, especially the fourth one, is more complicated than it should be. The fourth movie starts off with Gru attending a school reunion where he successfully arrests the antagonist of this movie, Maxine Lamal. However, sometime later, Maxine escapes and plans revenge against Gru. From here, the movie diverges into different subplots. Like the second movie, you have Gru and his family go under witness protection, where within that plot, it diverges into different smaller subplots, and I'll get to that more in a moment. The other major plot that happens is the Mega Minions storyline, which felt rather cliche given that we have already seen the Minions get mutated multiple times in this franchise. But back with the main plot of the movie, each person of the family goes through small individual arcs. Lucy becomes a hairstylist and screws up the job badly. Edith and Agnes take karate lessons where Agnes struggles with lying and Edith refuses to follow her sensei. Then there's Gru, who is struggling to gain the love from his new baby, Gru Jr. At the same time, he is also blackmailed by one of the neighborhood kids, Poppy, forcing him to help her pull a heist against his old school. This heist got the attention of the school admin, and she got Maxine's attention, who spent most of the movie basically doing nothing but searching for Gru. In fact, for being supposedly the big bad of this movie, we don't really see him at all. When he finally does something, his goal, which was to steal Gru's baby, was done with basically no challenge. When trying to get the baby back, there was a bit of challenge for Gru, sure, but in the end, he was successful. Oh, and the Mega Minions arrived in the scene to finish off Maxine and arrest him. Now, one thing I will say is that I like how we saw all the villains we met from the previous movies, although I don't get how Vector is there when he should be stranded on Mars. But out of all the writing flaws with this movie, this is the least of its problems. So when you compare how I talked about the basic plot of Despicable Me 4 compared to the first two, you would notice that I spent more time explaining it. Now, having a more complicated story is not that big of a problem, but it does become problematic when most of these subplots never have any resolutions to them. With Lucy's time as a hairstylist, that subplot I guess ends with her being able to escape the woman she screwed over. With Agnes and Edith, their subplots started and ended within just a few minutes, and they basically never had a significant role for the rest of the movie. The same goes for Margot too, which I completely forgot to mention earlier when I was trying to recap the movie, and that's not surprising because she was basically wasted as a character in this film. The movie set up this idea of Margot having to meet new friends in a new school, but she's bullied by the middle schoolers there. How does her subplot get resolved? Well, like the other storylines, she did nothing! Okay, to be fair, I guess befriending Poppy was meant to be the resolution to that arc. Ultimately, the fact that much of these storylines were very disconnected from each other and did not even get resolved by the end made me feel like I watched a series of animated shorts that were stitched together haphazardly to make a movie. Aside from the disconnectedness of the plot, what also really bothers me about this movie is how the characters essentially remain the same by the end of it. With the first two films, they ended with Gru, the girls, and Lucy, in the case of the second movie, experiencing major changes to their status quo, establishing a new normal if you will. With the fourth film, none of the characters experienced any changes at all, except for Gru Jr., who did eventually learn to love his father by the end, but that's to be expected given that he is a new addition to the franchise. I assume the reason why there isn't any major status quo changes with Despicable Me 3 and 4 compared to the first two is so that Illumination can just continue cranking out these movies without worrying about creating an overarching story for these characters. Why would that be something they want to avoid? Well, the moment a franchise does develop an overarching story, that implies that it has to end eventually. Characters can only change so much before they inevitably reach the end of their journey. So by mitigating the amount of growth these characters experience, they can just continue putting these characters in the same old shenanigans as if they are in a TV series like The Simpsons or SpongeBob. Don't take my word for it, the director of the film essentially said all of this. Now, I assume most of you will all say that the writing doesn't matter in these movies because we just watch them for the comedy nowadays. While that is still largely true, ask yourself this. How long can you watch the same types of jokes from this franchise before you eventually grow tired of it? It will happen eventually. The only way to really avoid this is to change up the story. Have the characters change and grow up a bit. I mean, it would be cool to see stories of Edith potentially following Gru's footsteps and becoming a villain, for example. There's a bunch of plots and potentially a lot of humor that can be unlocked by having the characters change, and Illumination is refusing to take that path. But if the studio is set to keep the characters frozen in time, then why not just follow the Simpsons formula all the way and create a TV series around these characters? I mean, much of the fourth movie already felt like a series of episodes from a TV show taped together into a movie. I guess in a way, that's what went wrong with the Despicable Me movies. The fourth movie was written like it was a season for a TV show, but the first and second films were written like the movies they actually are. That's why the first two Despicable Me movies worked, while the last two did not. But of course, these are just my thoughts and yours may be different. Let me know all about your opinions on the Despicable Me franchise down in the comments below, and please give this video a like, and subscribe for more content like this. With all that being said, thank you all for watching this video. I hope you all have a great day. See you in the next one.